of Earth. Gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy.
That's right. We have an opening. Oh my gosh. I'm still going to tweak it a little bit, but it's a thing. Ha 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 ha. Greetings, everyone. I am the Madhat Katt. I'm a little bit weary, you might be able to tell. But today, we are going to be talking about destroying the world with kindness. Talking about a very specific part of our party manifesto. And here joining me today is my supervillainous associate, Dr. Zodiac.
Good evening or afternoon, depends upon how you want to call it. But I'll leave that to whoever it is who's,
I mean, I don't know if you happen to catch the opening, but I wanted it to have kind of the feel like, oh no, I think I am waking up in surroundings that were not the surroundings that I thought I was in before. I seem to not be able to move. I seem to not be able to see, but I can hear sounds all around me. What time is it? What day is it? Oh my God, what's going to happen? Ah!
I think we covered a lot of that last week in the kink episode, but we can get back to it. That's fine.
Okay, like, never let it be said that I don't let some of my other passions leak into my other work.
Oh, dear me, you know, what were once vices are now habits. Yeah, it's a classic story.
Oh my gosh. You may not have noticed this, but last week I was talking over my dear doctor quite a bit, possibly because I was super excited about the topic. But as such, I am kind of handing the baton off to him today. He's going to take lead on part of this, and I'm still kind of in my relaxing mode because this was the first week that I only went into work one day, except it ended up kind of being 1.5, and one of those days I was there until midnight.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm gonna hand it off to you. But of course, we will start with what we have always started with, the party manifesto. I'm gonna have you kick us off because, believe it or not, I actually don't have my trillions and zillions of tabs open, and one of the tabs that is not open is today's document. Today's show document. I don't have it up.
Great. Well, you can send me the link to that, but I can use the party manifesto from the
Oh no, I didn't send it to you either. See, this is why we can't have nice things. You try to make a nice fancy opening, you forget to send your co-host the show document.
You know,
I'm gonna plead sleep deprivation.
I can have
from 3 days ago. I'm gonna plead sleep deprivation from 3 days ago.
Well, you also did a video. You did a video where we were, reviewing Under the Influence about 3 hours ago. So I'm saying.
Yeah, but I wasn't even that under the influence. It was one beer, and it was 4.3% ABV. It's fine. It's fine.
In that case, allow me to take an opportunity to pimp a wonderful product. I showed it in the episode of the reviews that we're doing, which, by the way, will be up tomorrow about 7 o'clock.
Yay!
But of all the things in the world that could possibly exist, somebody said, you know what would be awesome in a can? Mead. Mead in a can would be awesome.
Yes.
And,
agreed.
Strawberry in that thing. And to be perfectly honest, when they first said to me, mead in a can, I went, no. And then I was kind of, well, again, like everyone else, you have those moments where your friends gather together and they put you in a chair and they lock you into it and they force you to try a new experience.
I mean, with friends like ours.
Yeah, with friends like ours.
With friends like ours, who needs supervillains?
Right. Well, when most of your friends are in one way, shape, or form villains, super or not, from time to time, they have something, and goddamn it, you will experience it. But I tried it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I recommend it if you should happen to find yourself in Omaha and somewhere in the general vicinity of Beertopia. I recommend it.
Beer Corner USA. Woo, woo, woo. Oh, the only time I will ever chant anything with USA in it.
Yes. And by the way, not being paid for that. But if the nice people of Beertopia want to slip us something from time to time, whether it be a 6-pack or something along those lines.
Yeah, golly, I'm sure we've mentioned them a few times at this point. Maybe after like our 3-month mark, I should shimmy on over there and be like, hey. So we don't always drink on our show, but when we do, we usually mention you. Would you like to be a sponsor?
Just saying. If I sponsor, I'm saying
I'm going to ask him just like that too, and
that
it's very professional. I feel like they will respond well to it.
Yeah.
I'm for now. I think I'm just going to use our previous show document, and I will get along after we finish up with that. So, would you like to start, or shall I start?
I shall begin.
Okay.
And this one is actually kind of the #1 rule, and something that we will talk about.
I was going to say, it's actually, I guess I didn't realize it's the very first rule in the party manifesto that we are going to be like doing a deep dive into today.
And also, if you think about it, I think that's kind of the key part of this rule, is that breaking this rule with people on a routine basis is the lead cause of making people into supervillains. Rule #1. Whenever possible, supervillains must treat each other with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they've had.
Rule #2. Hate is hate and should be directed towards systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individuals. Excuse me, rather than toward individual persons and groups en masse. I swear I'm not drunk. I have an adrenaline high. Like my heart is beating like a jackrabbit and has been for the past 2 hours.
I'm kind of feeling that this is going to be one of those shows where we're sitting around tripping all over each other. It might not be the most educational thing, but it'll certainly be the most entertaining.
So philosophical and esoteric.
Yes. 3. Thoughtful deviation drives progress. Embrace your considerate deviance and let it guide you.
4. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
Rule #5. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must be either scheduled or performed on the perpetrator's own time.
6. The party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain, and reserves the right to refine and amend the manifesto on an ongoing basis. And I've been thinking, why do we do this? Why do we say the party manifesto at the beginning of every episode? I know it takes up a little bit of chunk of time, sometimes more rather than less, because we're feeling a little extra silly.
Yeah.
But even though it takes a little bit of time, I like that we do it at the beginning of the episode. And I think it is very in keeping with the spirit of things, because, you can launch into a subject matter, no matter what it is, and like you're just so ready, and you might forget some of those rules a little bit. You might forget that people are people, and even if they're total assholes, they are... you still shouldn't take away their humanity. You shouldn't demonize them if at all possible, even if you're going to poke a little bit of fun at them. You still. I'm starting to hear my own voice in my head. Is your?
I was actually adjusting something because it was causing that to happen. I was checking.
All right. Hopefully it's good. What was I saying?
About starting off the.
Yeah. We start off with the reading of the party manifesto so that we can keep those things in mind, no matter what we're talking about, no matter what's been going on in our day, in our week. It doesn't matter who we're mad at. It doesn't matter whose side we are particularly on right now, because with those rules in mind, that is how we are going to attack this subject matter. We might, like I said, poke a little bit of fun at people. We might punch up a little bit. But in general, we want to maintain the humanity of any persons involved and or mentioned. So
I think this goes hand in hand with it. The idea of, I kind of picture at some point we will have to have a necessary gathering of the supervillains at a con or something like that. Maybe a room party, maybe a big conference thing. But reading the party manifesto at the beginning oftentimes is kind of like anybody who has. Because the two of them are so closely related and we both have experiences in them, I would say if you grew up Catholic or if you've experienced a pagan circle, they both go hand in hand with the ritual establishes the mindset of everyone.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious in most things that I do, at least, that I'm a recovering Catholic, because everything has very much the feel of ritual about it, and that said ritual also tends to have a kind of sacredness to it, even if in the very next moment I make a funny noise like...
Well, yeah. But at the same time, I think that once you've established the actual ground rules and where we are all going to be and what we will accept and what we won't, I think if you don't accept somebody throwing the occasional raspberry around, then you're definitely in the wrong group. Because that's always a wonderful way to kind of break up a moment or to sit there and punctuate the idea that I'm just throwing out an idea. It may or may not necessarily be something that is with a fair amount of weight, but it's still an idea, but you should take it, with a grain of salt. And to me, I think that is another one where you kind of establish the first rule in this is talking about dealing with people with kindness. Because, I was sitting around talking with the wonderful lady in my life, Shelby, and we were both comparing notes. There is a wonderful meme that says that my favorite horror genre is good for her. And it shows like Carrie from the film Carrie and a few other. And I remember, I think I broke Kat.
I was like, no, I'm still listening. Please continue. I just, for whatever reason, that title of the genre really struck me.
Yeah.
Please continue.
But I think that something that creates the mindset for proper supervillainy is sometimes being on the wrong end of, massive amounts of abuse or a lack of kindness or things along those lines. That I will fix the world and make it a better place.
God damn it!
Yes. It totally goes hand in hand with that. I'm literally in the process. Oh, by the way, here's where, again, they're not paying me for this, but I have to, there's a great parallel that happened today when the great and mighty Lily posted a thing about how the X-Men could basically just be considered a long, long story of the breakup of Charles Xavier and Magneto. And I was just rereading they're coming out with a new edition of it, one of my favorite paper and pen RPGs, Aberrant. And there is a character in there who basically has an unrequited love for somebody that literally comes to within an eyelash of destroying the world. But there is a notion of paying evil unto evil that, when you sit around and consider a lot of the world is full of psychopaths and sociopaths, but to really drive somebody to the point of what I tend to think of as true villainy, a very directed form of, I see something and I will fix it, and if you happen to be in my way, you will be wearing my shoe prints for it. You have to be on the wrong end of a fair amount of, a lack of kindness that way. Yeah,
and that's something that I think will continually come back to as we go forward is, yes, we talk about supervillainy kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, because we're sort of turning the term on its head. We're actually, in reality, pretty fucking nice people. Yeah. And me especially, the thought of being rude or unkind to even people who are being shitty to me, I think about it a lot. I don't anymore because I don't have to deal with the careless, clueless public anymore. But even then, I would fantasize about, not all the time, but every now and again, it would be such a bad day that I would fantasize oh, here's all the things that I'm going to say the next time this sort of thing happens. I don't ever say it. I don't ever say it. I might be well within my rights to say such things, to not necessarily go after people on a personal level kind of thing, but attacking their behavior and just being stone cold asshole to them. I can't. The thought of it makes me sick.
There's actually a line. There's a line in. It doesn't come up in the films. A certain degree of it actually gets mentioned in the TV show, but in the Thomas Harris Hannibal Lecter novels, Clarice Starling makes has a mental comment to herself about how, after every horrible, terrible thing that Hannibal Lecter has done, the simple concept of rudeness just seems to be beneath him. And I think that being rude and falling prey to that particular mindset of the idea that I am going to sink down to your level because you have ruined my day. No, actually, I'm going to rise up above you. I'm going to be far more polite. I'm going to keep my, I'm going to keep myself in check at this particular moment because you are not fucking worthy of my scorn. I don't want to let you know that you got to me. I don't want to let this person know that anything that they have done has had any sort of impact on my day. And to me, and once I got used to that, I realized, hey, you know what? Rudeness really is kind of beneath me. I mean, in all the time that you have known me, which is actually quite a bit now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever been publicly rude to anyone.
No, it's been at least 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't exactly remember where or how we met, but it's been at least 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a bit of time. But yeah, if I'm at the point where I'm actually, being publicly rude to somebody, rest assured, they spent some time getting me there. And that might be my last straw in terms of just making them go away before things go physical.
Yeah. The whole last straw thing. When I think of myself like, losing my temper and really blowing up at people, every time it happens, like every few years or so, and it's usually in either extreme circumstances or circumstances where a shitty behavior has been just so repetitive and so consistent that I one day just finally snap. And the one that I think back to the most often was in high school. Me and my usual gang of people kind of, our turf down on the ground floor was this little nook under the stairs that went from the main floor down to the ground floor. We had a couple of couches under there. We had a table, and like that was our spot. And people could sit there, when we weren't there, but when it was time for us to be there, it was time for us to be there. And it just because, it was our spot for about 4 years.
Yeah.
For about 4 years. We went to school for 4 years. Anyway, there was one situation, I don't even remember what particularly the problem was. Someone had probably written something snarky about another person in the group on their Zanga. For you kids, that was something like LiveJournal, which was something like Twitter, but longer.
Yeah.
And less dynamic. And with less people looking at it. It was usually only like the 5 people you knew in class. But there was a major tiff happening. And finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. One of them in particular was being such a shithead. And like, I don't use that word lightly here.
Shithead.
Such a shithead. Such a shithead.
Total shithead.
It's so true that there is a ghost that's echoing my thoughts. See, there it is again. She was being such a shithead. And I finally just couldn't take it anymore. It was about 30 seconds to the next bell, to the next class. I dropped my books on the floor. There was a big thump. My head came up, and, I'm shorter than everybody. I always have been. And to me, I kind of vaguely remember what I was talking about. People kind of had to relay it back to me a little bit later. I sort of maybe was seeing red for those 30 seconds. And basically the gist of it was, you are being so rude and so stupid. This is completely ridiculous. You need to cut it out. You need to apologize because, yes, you are, in fact, in the wrong here. You are being shitty. Cut it out. And it just left. Like, I picked up my books and walked down the hall. And then I was at the elevator, and I was like, oh, it's time to go to class now, I guess. And my friend came running back up behind me like, oh my God, I've never seen you like that before. And I was like, well, it was called for. It was called for. Had enough. And then it was probably a few more years before I ever blew up like that again. But it takes a lot to get to that point. So I don't know. I know not everybody is like me. I know not everybody has the same personality that I do, the same level of temperament that I do. But almost always, you don't need to be rude. You don't need to be rude. And yet I see so much rudeness all around me and directed at me by strangers. And for why? What do you get out of this? How does it make your day better? Doesn't it like make you tired to be this angry all the time? I'm tired of just reliving that 30-second experience.
Yeah. I think part of it is that there is I think that there, especially in America and European society in general, there is, I'm going to go with America on this one, that there is something that is considered to be empowering about, I'm taking command of the situation and I will step into the middle of this. And, rudeness kind of goes hand in hand with that. I will step all over the thing and all of this stuff because, God damn it, I can. And you will learn to respect that. And every time that somebody does that, I'm like, wow, I am tuning you completely out of my world at this point. Because it's the signal to noise ratio element. The louder that you're being, really, the less information that you're giving me. You're telling me something, and I know that you really want me to pay attention to it, but the manner in which you're saying it means that I'm really never going to pay attention to you again.
Yeah.
And I think that there's always the classic supervillain scene, and they even have some fun, make fun of it in the Austin Powers film franchise, where the supervillain will sit down, the James Bond villain, the supervillain, whichever one, will sit his opposite number across a dinner table, and they'll sit down and they'll have a conversation. Usually it's a form of exposition or character development between the two of them.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. But I always kind of felt like that particular scene was the empowering element of politeness. I have you in my power. I could destroy you at this particular moment. But before I consider doing that, let's take a look at our alternatives and let's talk it out over dinner.
Well, and, that particular type of villain, usually the supervillain, because, a villain usually has to take a few extra steps in order to become a supervillain. It usually has something to do with acquisition or development of technology, or, just a particular hold on a large mass of people or a geographic location. But, yes, I could be like some uncouth villain on the streets, some rube, and, grab you by your necktie and point a gun at your head. But I'm not like that. I'm going to sit you down. Granted, you'll be strapped to the chair, but, I'm going to feed you a nice meal before I erase you from the face of this earth. I have a little bit of respect for you. You've gotten this far. You almost captured me a number of times. So, we're not, and I love it when there's also the element of we're not so different, you and I.
I actually kind of want to sit down and write the polar opposite of, not so much, at least change that particular line where the villain's like, no, we are totally nothing alike. I got nothing. I mean, I respect the fact that you got here. I really respect your talents and prowess, but personality-wise, and this just isn't working. First of all, you start with this fork and you work your way in by course. That's the way it works. And then, that's a fairly simple method of handling these things. But yeah, to me, that is the thing of writing a particularly good villain, is that also a villain in their mind should be right. A villain, we are chock full of a world full of villains all around us, but every last one of them, with the exception of, shall we say, a grifter class, have a very certain and very strong set of beliefs, and those beliefs are very empowering to them, whether it be a religious fanatic or a political ideologue or things along those lines. I may or may not agree with them, but I am also aware that in their mind, the things that they are doing feel correct to them because of what their belief structure is or what their experiences are.
Yep.
Knowing that actually really does give you a great line on being able to work around whatever their issues might be. Dave Nesbit, supervillain psychologist. I will.
Yes, no, please. Can we just get the really batshit religious fanatics and some of the people who subscribe to QAnon's Twitter page?
Speaking of,
I know there's no official anything. It's all just nonsensical, rando things here and there. Just get those people in a room and just analyze the shit out of them in a very Hannibal Lecter kind of way. There was something that you said earlier that I kind of want to jump back to real quick. You were talking about the genre of horror film that you like to call good for her,
yeah,
i.e. Carrie, and I would assume a lot of those films that would fall under this category might be rape revenge films. And that is another thing that I kind of want to like tease out in today's episode and in the future as well. You know, where do we get to the line of, you know, supervillainy as countercultural movement in order to make the world a better place? And when do we cross the line over into, now this is just revenge?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it feels like it might be pretty clear cut in the way, like, well, obviously, you know, on the one side, you are, you know, doing it to make the world a better place. And then when it kind of starts to creep into you satisfying your own personal urges, then it's kind of gotten away from the purity of true supervillainy. But in reality, you know, we, just like you were saying, people do the things they do because they feel it is correct. It is in line with what they believe. And it can become really easy to fool yourself that you're doing something for the greater good, but you are in fact doing it to satisfy your own needs, your own urges, or the particular political goal of a single individual, which is kind of redundant. A single individual for an individual, some individual out there. They don't necessarily need to be oneself. Thoughts?
Thoughts to me? I mean, when you one of the things, because we've had this conversation in chat before, and it's something that we should bring up, and we likely will again and again and again. But part of the element of supervillainy and also just villainy in general is the idea that society has a thing and somebody disagrees with it. And oftentimes, the supervillain in this case might be right. I mean, there is that post that somebody made. I can't... I don't have the information in front of me to verify it, but in 1967, there was a poll in like Time or Newsweek, and one of the most hated men in America was Martin Luther King. Because, you know, he was causing a lot of disruption and all of these other things and stuff like that. But, you know, now give it about 20-something years. You know, I remember it was 1984, 1985 when his birthday became a holiday. There is something about being the first person to successfully get up there and say, hi, this thing that you guys are so totally used to, the subjugation of people of color, or the second-class citizenship, or even lower than that, of LGBTQ people for the longest time. Mm-hmm. The entire alienation of entire groups is inherently wrong, and we need to address this. The problem is, and it goes hand in hand with another subject that we will talk about later, maybe not tonight, but at some point, the idea of punching up and punching down. Mm-hmm. When you suddenly start saying, no, I'm sorry, these people that you're so used to picking on are now exempt from that because what we've been doing is really fucked up. Mm-hmm. And people will automatically rebel against that because it's a reflexive thing. This is the way it's always been. Why does it have to change? And you have to sit there and spend some time to convince people, no, this is messed up. I think you can go, I'll probably get it wrong, but, Galileo. Hey, the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. Supervillain. Because let's face it, that is absolutely attacking the very basic elements of how it is that we view our space in the cosmos. To me, I think that it is something that we have to be aware of is when somebody comes along and really shakes the shit out of society or points out something, and your initial reaction is shock, horror, how much of that is because of the fact that what they have pointed out to you is something that you're just used to? It's a societal norm. And we don't spend nearly enough time in our society doing process review to take a look at our societal norms. I mean, I really came of age during the 1980s and watching the initial reactions to HIV/AIDS and looking back on it and going, we were horrible fucking human beings. There is, and so, but what it also did was it drove LGBTQ issues to the forefront and made them recognizable for the first time in quite a while in the popular consciousness.
Well, not just increasing the visibility, but also increasing the humanity of people within that community.
Yeah, if you can look at somebody who's in the midst of a full-blown, who's in full-blown AIDS, and you can look down on them and say they deserve that, sorry, you're not a supervillain, you're just a shithead.
Actually, Moof has gone to the store, and so he cannot echo, shithead!
Yes. Well, wait. No, I got it. Okay, we're good, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think the other element to me is that, and thinking of supervillainy, is that casual cruelty is another one that's off my list. If I'm being cruel to you, you either asked for it, literally. Again, last week's episode. Or
previous episode number 6.
Yeah, or there's a set of circumstances where that cruelty is a necessary part of me being able to get something accomplished. But the idea of casual cruelty and casual sadism is something that, it'll sound kind of funny when I say this, but I feel like it literally got beaten out of me, both by my grandfather, who had said that sadism is a form of weakness. And the more I think about it, the more I think that he was right. And also years and years of martial arts training, because, the great Dr. McCoy, my judo instructor, made the great comment one time about, the true sadists get taken out of martial arts pretty quick, because the magic words are "my turn next." And if you were mean and cruel to somebody there, they've got every opportunity to get even with you. And that's part of the reason that kindness goes hand in hand with that. If I'm training, we're working out. And I'm working to make you better, and you are working to make me better. And there is a kindness inherent in that. Do we both hurt afterward? Yeah. But it's a hurt of construction rather than destruction. Unless it's me and Bill Lockwood playing, in which case we probably covered.
I was actually just wondering, is he in the room right now? I don't know if he is or not. There was you were talking about kind of the reflexive notion at suddenly being told you can't make fun of this group of people anymore. There was a really good video within Innuendo Studios' series of Angry Jack. I can't remember which one exactly off the top of my head because it's in multiple parts. I will link it in the doobly-doo when I remember which one it is. But he puts forward the scenario of, say you're at a barbecue and you're having yourself a hamburger because you love hamburgers. Nothing's better than a good old hamburger on a fabulous summer day. And you offer one to the person sitting next to you on the bench, and the person says, "Oh no, that's okay, I'm vegan." And you immediately have the thought of like, so what, you think you're better than me? Wait, and like, they didn't say anything other than, "Oh no, thank you, I'm vegan." They were informing you of the thing. They didn't say it with any hint of like, I'm vegan. They didn't say it like that. They just informed you of a fact. Well, and he may have even said like, they said no thank you, and they said, "Oh, why not?" "Oh, because I'm vegan." So they were asked the question, then they answered the question with the answer, and then the person who asked the question gets pissy about it, like, just because I eat. Well, maybe, your veganism is the thing that's destroying the environment because you're killing all the plants. Huh? You ever think about that? Tell me not to eat hamburger. And that's not what happened. It's not what happened. And what he was kind of getting at was this idea that if they are vegan, they must have a reason for not eating meat. And if they have a reason for not eating meat, presumably it's a good one. And if they have a good reason for not eating meat, does that mean that there is a good reason to not be eating meat and that you shouldn't be eating meat and yet you're still eating meat? Oh no. Just by being vegan and being, occupying the same space as you, they are instantly judging you. You feel judged and insulted and embarrassed because, but I think of myself as a good person. Am I doing a thing that's, I'm not doing anything wrong? And then people have the same feeling, I think, when, as you and Star have put it in past episodes, you guys are children of the 80s. And, you remember some of the things that were in common parlance when making jokes about stuff, or, derogatory terms that weren't necessarily directed toward anybody of a particular group, but you use that word to be derogatory to your friends. And then suddenly sensitivity's changing within society, and suddenly it's not socially acceptable to make fun of people just because they belong to a certain group, just because they were born with a particular trait, just because they choose to practice a particular brand of whatever that is not hurting anybody. And they're not trying to force you into doing it. And yet you make fun of them.
But that's also, again, here's where, and I think growing up in that period of time and deciding to, I'll have a, thinking of 80s and all that, I'll have a great REO Speedwagon quote, but, learning to roll with the changes at that particular point in time helped me to broaden out my world a little bit, but there are still plenty of people I know from that particular era who are really getting irritated and annoyed that they can't sit there and use a lot of pejoratives toward LGBTQ people, or, a lot of ethnically charged words and insults were kind of getting phased out in the 80s, thank God. But it was still there. The subtext was still, it's still here now, but it was way, way worse then. And to me, I think that one of the things that everybody is resistant to change on some level. And when it's something that is something that you grew up with and was an accepted societal norm, then you're even more willing to stand up and get irritated about it because you feel like you're defending the way that you're raised. Mm-hmm. And that ties in very nicely with the vegan thing. There's two elements to that. One is, I think that there's a rather unfortunate societal cliche about vegans that, you'll be attending a party, there'll be somebody there who'll be vegan, you offer them something, and then you get a lecture as a result of them being vegan. That is a rather accepted, not so much societal norm, but definitely
I was going to say, would you say that's more of a media thing, or do you think that's something that some people somewhere encountered in their lives and then it just spread everywhere? Especially after watching Lindsay Ellis's recent video about the history of transphobia in the media in particular, and why the picture in people's heads, whether or not they realized it, of a transgender person was a monstrous man disguising himself as a woman in order to do dastardly things. Whether or not they realized it, that was the imprint that took.
Yeah.
And I'm almost inclined to believe the same thing about vegans. I think first it happened with vegetarians, and fucking PETA happened, and I'm sorry, but I hate those people. I don't hate very many groups, but I don't hate the people within PETA. I just hate the organization. as the inanimate thing. I hate PETA.
There's a rather unfortunate grifter class element to PETA, which they're a combination of like grifter class plus ideologue that is remarkably irritating and incredibly dangerous in a lot of ways because they are doing anything but helping their cause. Okay, anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was basically the end of the thought. I was also just thinking of a video I watched. I can't remember. Again, I'll link it in the thing later on when I remember it. Someone was looking at a video on TikTok that was made by, please nobody go look up this person. Nobody go torture her. There's no reason to. Just don't even look it up. Don't give her the views, and don't go and harass her on any kind of social media. That vegan teacher made a video basically saying that it's selfish to come out as LGBTQ+, and instead you should just go vegan, and how vegan is the most special and noble thing a person can do. And like, it hurts to watch it as a person who is very plant-based but not vegan. Oh my God, stop. You're not convincing anyone who is, just vegetarian for, health or religious reasons to go completely vegan. You're definitely not convincing anyone who is a meat eater. You're definitely not going to convince anyone this way. And also, you're kind of being an asshole to queer people. Stop. It's
that rather horrifying moment when you see somebody who really does feel that and again, here's where we go with somebody feels their work. And having had my moments of being that.
You're kind of cutting in and out, Dave. Can you repeat that?
Okay. Let's try again. It's that rather horrifying moment of somebody who feels that they're being right and they feel like they're trying to help. And in the process, they're doing absolutely none of the above. If anything, they're kind of destroying their own case as they say it. Part of me wants to see that video now, and part of me just doesn't want to deal with the cringe element of it.
Yeah, I would watch it on a day where, like, you don't feel particularly righteous about anything, and, like, that can be your feeling righteous thing for the day. Like, it could just be kind of a chill time, and then you could watch it then, or choose not to. You don't have to inflict that upon yourself. What I liked there, now that I'm thinking about it, there were actually two people that were kind of responding to this video. They were semi-reaction videos, but they also had some good things to say. Not just, oh my God, this person is so stupid, plays video. Wow, what a moron. Personal insult about the way you look? Meh. And just continuing on like that. I, in general, hate reaction videos, but some people do it thoughtfully. And actually add something to the conversation with it. One of them was Jammy Dodger, who's a trans man in the UK. And then the other one was someone who is vegan, but not crazy, beat you over the head, like giving every other bad activist a bad name, or giving every other activist a bad name. That was a weird thought. Kind of vegan. And she reacted to this video, saying like, I want to, encourage people to eat less meat too, but this is not the way to do it. And you're actually, I think this particular YouTuber, she may be some shade of queer as well. But watching the both of them react to this video, yes, there is the element of cringe, but then I think they also give some thoughtful responses to it, as well as being kind of like appropriately upset at their community being attacked, and then another community that they maybe belong to, in the case of the vegan YouTuber, it's coming at her from all sides, and it's just all awful. That was the end of that.
Okay. I know, and again, that's that moment where watching the comments in YouTube videos is something that can drive anybody to insanity, because
Oh yeah,
or
don't do that.
or Twitter or any other form of social media. Don't read the comments, because it tends to bring out the worst in people, and you start discovering that anonymity is the enemy of civil discourse.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because we spend so much time hiding the way that we really want to react to something or the way that we really want to speak to somebody. So when we have an anonymous moment, goddamn, we have a tendency, and I would, again, like to say that I am totally pure and have never done anything like that, but no, I've done it. I'm
Yeah.
I've gotten away from it to the large part, but every now and again, I want to call somebody a screaming fuckwit.
I'm working on, I don't know if it will end up being an episode of Prosperity and Supervillainy, or if it will end up being a video essay, but I am working on something where I look at that exact thing, the whole unfiltered instant knee-jerk reaction responses to things, and how that's not great for us to do because it just leads to a waterfall of it happening, and that waterfall turns into a frozen avalanche. But then also how the platforms in and of themselves encourage that quick knee-jerk reaction to things, especially in short form things like Twitter and TikTok. And back in the day when it was a thing, even though I was never a part of it, Vine, hitting a like, hitting a heart, hitting a thumbs down, and then just immediately going about your day, or leaving a shitty comment and going about your day, when potentially that shitty comment is going to stay with the person who has to look at those and go over them, because they don't have 3 million subscribers, so they have to look through all the comments on themselves. That's going to stay with them for the rest of the day. It might stay with them for weeks or for months, and not just them, but other people who are coming to look at that content because it's something that they enjoy, and they identify with the person who's making the content. They might go down, read that comment, and it might ruin their day, might stay with them for weeks or months, and signal to them that it's not socially acceptable to be vegan, to be queer, to be anything other than a white cishet man. And, that's not an attack on white cishet men. That's just what it often turns into when you step too far away from this line of normalcy. Suddenly, don't hate me, you're villainized.
I think, though, that
I'm not sorry.
Yeah, I think that stepping away from normalcy is, and again, this ties into one of our rules, is that thoughtful deviance is what drives progress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I keep saying that your average, and this is where it's a group that I will pick on just because I enjoy picking on them, and I make no excuses for it. It's one of my great vices, but conservatives, by and large, have always struck me as the sort of people that would have been sitting there bitching about the fact that we were now cooking food instead of eating food raw, or doing things like, remember back in the days when we didn't curl up next to a fire and the animals would come drag us away at night? Wasn't that awesome? It made us stronger as a people. God damn it! It totally has that feel to it of seeing people's reactions in those moments of that particular part of them. Where, again, I'm going to pick on my grandfather because, again, he gave me a great piece of advice. But he's like, at any given moment, if you've had a sudden, if you're just reacting to something, almost inevitably, the first thought that you have at that moment is only going to make things worse. Because it's the most primal part of you, it's the darkest part of you, it's the part that wants to strike out, and not the part of you that wants to think. And there's room for that. If somebody throws a punch at me, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time thinking about what my reaction is. If somebody says something that gets on my nerves, I'm going to take a moment and think about it, because I want to redirect that. I want to take it into a place where we can talk about it without it escalating upward. And I think that we don't spend nearly enough time as people realizing the actual power of a moment of taking a deep breath and thinking that one out.
I don't know if you've seen it yet on Netflix. I know we're kind of stepping away from the usual sandwich format of this, but I'm okay with it. There's a show on Netflix called Kid Cosmic, and first off, the animation is really cool. It's very paper crafty, comic booky. Like, it reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes a little bit. The style of it and the motion of it is very and like there's almost frames missing. It's really nifty visually, but the main character, I think everybody just calls him Kid. I don't remember what his actual name is, but he's raised by his grandpa. They live out in this desert town in probably like Arizona or somewhere. And the grandpa has this saying, freaking out, breathe it out. And the kid uses that repeatedly, just, to get control of himself, but also to kind of get control of these new cosmic powers that he suddenly finds himself in. The story is basically stones of power fall from the sky and alien invaders are coming, but Kid and his team of now super powered friends are going to defeat them and save the Earth. And one of them is an older girl who works at the diner in the town. It's like stupid small town. And when she's trying to like get a hold of how to make this work, he actually relays that to her. And like it's complete with meditation, seating and everything. Freaking out, breathe it out. Freaking out, breathe it out. And first of all, I love that. And second of all, adults, take note, because you can do that too.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I'm gonna we've got Lord Starhawk on deck in here, and I'm going to bring him in. I think.
Let's drag him in, chain him to a chair.
I have got Sim.
Hello.
Unfortunately, his green screen does not have fancy hoobly-doos. Someone's got video on sound again. I'm hearing feedback. Anyway, hi.
Greetings.
How you doing? Oh no, did he freeze? Nope, he there.
Howdy,
Is your mic
howdy.
on? There he is.
I think so. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm on my phone because my PC is no longer allowing permissions on anything. So I'm trying to figure out my settings. Something's going on.
Sounds like a villainous plot, but the bad kind of villainy.
It is. It is.
You may continue with whatever you were saying, Doc, and then I'm gonna put a question to you, Star.
I think that there's, especially one of the biggest mistakes that you make going into adulthood is the idea that strength kind of goes inherently hand in hand with being able to react and show off your strength in the moment. And that tends to cut down on the amount of time that we spend thinking about what our next reaction is going to be. And no, for me, I've noticed that if I actually take a brief second and stop and think about it, I'm probably going to come up with a bit more of an intelligent answer that's probably going to drive the conversation to a place where we can achieve a degree of resolution rather than, making things worse.
Indeed. Star, just to catch you up here, topic today is basically the first rule of the party's manifesto. A villain must always act with, or rather, whenever possible, act with kindness, civility, respect, even toward those that are not offering you the same. And we've gone to a few places on that, but when you first heard that party rule, or when you first read it, depending, I can't exactly remember which rule you read the first time we had you on. But when you read that, what kind of came to mind for you?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I really kind of have tried to to live my adult villainous life in that manner. You know, civility is deserved until self-revoked, I believe, with people. You know,
that's a pretty good way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, I try to approach, you know, everybody and every situation with civility, even in the face of disagreement. And the only time I really break that is when they like I said, self-revoke by doing so much.
You're just trying to show off your T-shirt now.
I'm buffering. My brain is buffering.
Been there, done that today.
Yeah.
I've already had my buffering moment as I was trying to recover.
So yeah, I you know, when somebody I mean there's lines people can cross, of course, that just have to get shut down at this point. You know, we're far enough in society that people should understand that the new etiquette is not the old etiquette. And if people, you know, fly in the face of that, either on purpose or through, you know, willful ignorance, then it's time to, you know, educate them in whatever way is necessary.
It's interesting that you put it as old etiquette versus new etiquette, because in a way, I know that there are, you know, I keep thinking back to Dogtown and Z-Boys earlier when the guys are talking about, I don't remember which one of the gang would like get them kicked off of bus lines and, you know, be making like horrible faces and just screaming at old ladies to give them a fright. And like, I didn't know if, you know, they weren't going to pick us up because they were afraid that, you know, he was going to snatch a wig off of some lady's head. And, you know, there were plenty of older folks who are like, oh, you young people today, you're so impolite. And in a way that's true. But at the same time, I don't know, like we seem to have had, I say seem to have had, like I've seen more than 30 years. I have not. I've seen 32 and many months, to be exact. I don't remember how many months until my birthday. But it's almost been like a huge backlash against being ultra polite and, you know, having to be like fake nice to tons of people at your school, in, you know, your religious community, just people you encounter generally that you've had to be fake nice to. People just said, fuck this, I don't want to take it anymore. And, you know, now we just say whatever comes into our minds because fuck you, man. And on the one hand, that's kind of good, because I think it's a mistake to try to encourage people to perform non-genuine niceties. Like you can be civil and respectful of people without being fake nice, without lying to them, without keeping pertinent information from them in order to maintain etiquette. On the other hand, now people can just be super shitty to right to your fucking face, as I have experienced and whined about many, many times in previous weeks. But there's also something to be said, you know, for who is on the shit end of the stick with that bad etiquette, as it were, because yeah, sure, back in 1952 or whatever, you have nice little old white lady who is, the peak of politeness to everyone she meets, until she sees that Negro boy trying to go through the main entrance. No! And when in fact, said Negro boy is a grown-ass man of 72. He's as old as you, bitch. So,
Yeah.
like, who is afforded the niceness? And, is it, who's allowed to get that from you? And how do you make your rules on that? So, I like the idea that in the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy, we kind of take a blanket approach to begin with, because it doesn't matter whether you are what we might call our enemy. It doesn't matter whether you are a friend. It doesn't matter whether you are a stranger. Until we get to a point where we have to step beyond this, we're going to treat you with respect and civility. We're going to treat you with kindness. We're going to recognize your humanity. And, we don't have to be best friends or anything, but I also don't have to treat you like, something that I stepped in and made it face at while walking through the park.
I think
Yeah.
that kind of
Those are my thoughts exactly.
I think that kind of civility and manners, especially now, it's in a way it's become a function of our society and how it is that we view somebody in relation to ourselves, specifically in a means of class. That you are in a situation where a customer used to be, where a customer would walk up to you.
Anymore.
Yeah, and there was much rejoicing. Where a customer would walk up to you and basically have the feeling that they could sit there and say whatever shitty thing because you are beneath them, because you are, the provider of fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
And they are paying you for this particular service. So therefore, that means that by default, they can treat you horribly. And that is...
Sometimes it was even before they had paid me any money.
Yeah. And the funny part to me is that there are plenty of sex workers who would not put up with that shit at all. And I think that that's something that we as a society need to work on, because it's one of those, everybody knows that working in retail is hell. Everybody knows that working, that a lot of the jobs that we are given are hell, simply because of the fact that, like the quote from the play goes, hell is other people. And
good play, by the way.
Yeah, that is a great piece of work, isn't it? To me, there is something about the way that people, like, I work in a supply job. My job is to make sure that people at the hospital have the tools necessary to get their job done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like topping from the bottom sometimes. It's like, oh, you need this particular item? How did you request it? Did you treat me with a certain degree of respect? Oh, look, the people who were actually nice to me but gave the call after, they were very nice to me. They're getting their shit first, and you can fucking wait. Obviously, if it's not a crucial life or death sort of thing.
Right.
But there is something...
We need more pens. Can you get us more pens?
Yeah.
I suppose, technically speaking, at some point, it might be a life or death situation, because they need to write down the amount of this drug that this patient needs to receive, and they need to write it down now because the shift is about to change.
Mm-hmm. Or, or like resuscitation bags or anything along those lines. Fill in the blank.
Very important.
But
very important.
I also noticed that there is an inverse law to this at the hospital. I don't know what other experiences other people have had. Anybody who's watching can fill it in. The doctors are usually routinely pretty cool. They're easy to get along with. They don't have a whole lot to prove. You survived medical school. You're doing fine. CNAs...
It's quite a lot to go through.
Yeah, that is a long, long period of time. But CNAs and technicians are routinely the people that we all sit there and go, oh, look, it's this person calling. Okay, how many rings before it goes to message? There is a rather unfortunate element of you try to grab whatever power you can and whatever method you can when you feel and perceive that you are powerless, or you are, or if you're on the lower level of the social strata of where you work, but you perceive as somebody being beneath you, I can vent all the shit that I had to deal with today in the person under you. I'd much rather spend my time going, hey, you had a shit day, talk it out, rather than treat me like that. But I'm
Yeah.
a little bit of a weirdo, a pervert, and a supervillain that way, and I actually enjoy relating to human beings as human beings rather than objects to throw my negative emotions at.
Did you have a thing, Star?
Oh, no, I agree with what's being said, absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that about when I was talking about the etiquette, the previous etiquette and modern etiquette, yada yada. Well, meaning that everybody in America is like you were talking about with the old lady seeing somebody coming in through the entrance that she didn't want coming in through the entrance. Everybody in America reasonably knows that that kind of stuff is no longer acceptable. And it never was acceptable. It just was tolerated.
Mostly, depending on what state you live in. I hear some shit. I hear some shit about people that are not Nebraska. I think in the Midwest, we have mostly not obliterated, but we've mostly shoved back in the closet, or put in storage boxes. They're going to go down to the basement and never be seen again until we're dead and our children are digging them up and they go, oh my God, is that what my parents were into? Jesus Christ.
Right. But those people, even the people who choose to be that way, know that it's not acceptable. They know that treating people, because of the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or, anything specific about somebody. Yeah. They know that it's not acceptable. They just don't give a fuck. Yeah. And
even if not, they might not even think of it as, oh, this is societally unacceptable. This is societally unacceptable. I think sometimes it's more what society thinks doesn't even enter the equation. All they hear is like, this is immediately what I want to say, but I know because of the room I'm in, if I say that, I'm going to get flack about it. And so I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with it. Or they say it, and then they immediately reflexively go on the defense and say, does anybody have anything to say about that?
Right.
Tell me I'm wrong.
And it reminds me of...
You were thinking it. I just said it.
It reminds me of...
He just says what we're thinking.
It reminds me of the current situation when people... when you see videos on YouTube and Instagram of people walking into a business without a mask on, they're holding the camera. They walk into a business without the mask on, and the reason that they're holding the camera is because they know they're going to get confronted. And these are the people that are carrying around, section codes and all of that kind of stuff of the municipal laws and all that kind of stuff in their pocket to try to prove that they're right. And so, these people they know better. They're goddamn adults. They know that they should be wearing a mask. They just don't want to. And so what I like seeing now is one of my guilty pleasures on YouTube is watching the videos of basically a murder of customers. Oh, and customers in large groups are not crowds. They're murders, just like crows.
On the one hand, I would agree with you. On the other hand, leave my babies out of this. You leave my corvids out of this. Stupid customers are nothing like my sweet black feathery babies.
Okay.
Yes.
You monster.
Okay.
Anyway, please continue.
All right. I take it back. But yeah, I love seeing them descend on that person, both the employees and the other customers and, everybody else, going up and basically kicking them out of the store along with the employees. That's one of my guilty pleasure videos that I'm watching recently is just people confronting people treating retail people like crap. and saying, what are you doing? This guy's making $10 an hour. You know, he didn't make the choice that you're making, that you have to wear the mask. Somebody, you know,
Man, he just works here.
But the person who just works there is still the person that you get to sit there and create your little moment of, I'm superior to you, so therefore I can do this. There is still that very much a classist element. And also, one of if you have the opportunity, it's 6 hours and it's totally worth it. But there is a documentary. I won't bring this one to Us Three Blokes because it's really involved. But it's called Can't Get You Out of My Head. It's Adam Curtis's new documentary, and he calls it an emotional history of, an emotional history of the recent past. And part of it is this notion of how it is that individualism started off as a really, really good idea, and now it has spun completely out of control. My right to swing my arm, as the saying goes, ends roughly about the same point that John's nose begins. It's a period where we have to sit down and remind ourselves that just because I am an individual doesn't mean that I get to forget that you are too, and I have no right whatsoever to step on where you're at. And to me, I think that that is something that this whole period of time, this whole last now effectively year, has taught us, is that there are plenty of people out there who give zero fucks about, they care a lot about their individuality and none about yours. And there's a technical term for that: psychopathy.
I'm not going to talk about it today, but sometime in the future, I actually do want to talk about people who actually possess psychopathic traits and how, because I'm a fucking commie pinko queermo tree hugging granola munching hippie, I would like to see if we can someday find a way to integrate that type of person into society, because I don't think we can just we'll never pay any attention to them, and when they cross our paths, we will make sure that they have no resources to do anything in their life. That's a topic for a different day. Speaking of which, there are a number of topics that are coming up here, not just talking amongst the three of us, but also going on in chat, that we might not necessarily get to today, but I do want to acknowledge them. One thing Han actually brought up, and I've said this a number of times before, and it's kind of like a little caveat, unspoken subtext to the rule number 1 in the manifesto, is that there is not always time to be polite. There is not always time to be civil. And generally speaking, when I give out these rules, I say it in mind, I say it with this in mind, that if you are in a place of power, in order to perform these rules, if you have enough resources at your disposal to make sure that you are safe and that you are not going to be put in harm's way because of this, or even better, to step in front of someone who doesn't have the same resources, the same level of power that you do, step in front of them to take the hit that's not going to hurt you, but it isn't going to immediately hit them maybe quite as hard because, another fucking person is being on their side, visibly on their side. None of these things, what am I trying to say here? Basically, if you're in a position, whether it's because of your ethnic background, or your country of origin, if you're in a place where you have a particular accent in your speaking voice that is perceivable by the people who are coming in, and if they are shitty to you because of it, I really fucking hope that someone who works with you or who is friends with you, or even if it's just the fucking stranger behind that person who's being a shithead, will step in and say, that is not okay. There is no reason to do that. This is a perfect stranger, and even if they're not, rude, cut it out. Go away.
Yeah.
And if people come back with the, well, I can say whatever I want, like, yeah, you can say whatever you want, and I can respond to you saying that that is shitty and unacceptable. So none of this should be taken in a way, and I'm sorry, I'm getting like worked up now. This isn't. I am not upset at the concept of it, or rather, you know, people bringing up the fact that, hey, not everybody actually has the time or the you know, resources available to remain civil. Sometimes action just has to be fucking taken because lives are on the line, because there is nothing else to do but act instead of remaining calm and polite and civil.
Like,
I don't want anybody to take this in the way like, can't we all just get along? I mean, no, man. Sometimes we fucking can't. Sometimes people are fucking assholes, and you do have to say something. And it should be on the shoulders of the people who have the resources available, who have the emotional energy to do so, who are in a position where they are safe enough to, if a hit comes their way, they can take it. It's not going to hit them that much. And they're certainly going to take a lot less damage than the person next to them that negative attitude, negative action, negative words are being thrown at. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, I was going to say,
damn it.
kind of like,
so angry at these hypothetical assholes.
You know, sometimes there's not enough time. There's not time for civility. But, you know, like the wolf in Pulp Fiction, when he shows up and he's like, well, you know, even just a please, maybe. And he goes, you know, and he tells him, well, you know, if it'll get us out of here any quicker, then please, you know, please, pretty please, you know, with cherries on top. But until then, you know,
you know.
Yeah,
no, he throws a fuck somewhere and that move the fucking body. Please, pretty please, with cherries on top, move the fucking body.
Right.
Even in tense moments, I still find the time, you know, if I'm in the middle of something, to say please and thank you. If anything, that's actually a sign that things are getting way, way more tense. Is the more polite I get in a strange situation.
Yeah.
Because doing that allows you to, at the very least, keep things from the other people around you from hopefully spiraling out of control on an emotional level.
Yeah.
Who's got the emotional center of the situation? So please and thank you. As long as somebody's still doing that, we're not totally fucked yet.
Right, exactly.
Kind of. Go ahead, Star.
As far as it taking time to be civil, I don't know about that. You know, I always find, you know, even if I run into a burning room and I'm trying to save the person who is on the couch that's on fire, it isn't much harder to say, here, please take my hand, you know, something like that. I'm just saying.
And that's a good thing to strive for. If someone runs into a room to rescue me off the burning couch, and presumably I was napping. I nap really hard. I can't hear all that's going around me. I can't smell the smoke. I can't feel the heat. But if someone, you know, burst in and said, take my hand, instead of please take my hand, I wouldn't hold it against them. If I knew them, if it was you in particular, I'd be outside, you know, getting under the anti-shock blankets, whatever you call them, that the EMTs have. And I go, would it have killed you to say please, John? But that's because I'm an asshole. Maybe not an asshole. We've been talking a lot about assholes. I am an ass. There's a distinct difference between being an ass and being an asshole. Because you're a whole lot of ass.
There's a video, a segment from one of my favorite TV shows. If you haven't watched Justified, everybody should. It's brilliant. But there is a scene in there where the main character is talking to someone, and he just makes Timothy Oliphant makes a comment about, have you ever heard the one about if you met an asshole in the morning, you met an asshole? If you met assholes throughout the entire day, you're the asshole.
That is an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's something where I heard that, and then I thought to I had a day about 3 weeks later where I was like, why is everybody being such a dick? Then I thought about it, and I went, "Oh shit! I have really."
Oh no!
I got it some apologies to make. Be right back.
That is just a hell of a feeling, though, isn't it? When you realize what an ass you've been, and you go, oh, shit, and then you get that kind of reflexive feeling, like, well, why are you vegan? Are you saying that I have to be vegan? It's that same kind of feeling, like, but you did the thing, and it irritated me, and you have reasons to be sorry too, but. I am sorry. I was in fact an ass.
Yes.
There's one other little, like, I'm still hearing my voice. It's like there's 7 of me. But there is one little other caveat that I want to throw under that rule. So not just in the individual person-to-person situations where, whenever possible, one must attempt civil, or one must strive, maybe not attempt, but strive to be civil. I think another thing to think about in there, and again, this is related back to chat again, we're not going to totally dismantle imperialism in one episode, but bringing up the British occupation of the of Southeast Asia, particularly India, and they occupying powers don't really respond to politeness, and we are experiencing that in the U.S. as far as BLM protests have gone, especially last summer. People are saying, well, you would get so much further if you would just. You catch more honey. What is it? You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Look, generally speaking, people who are stirring up shit at protests like that are there specifically to stir up shit, and they are not particularly interested in supporting the particular movement that's coming out there. But honestly, even if there is a little property damage done by the people who are acting on behalf of the movement, I am not advocating violence, by the way. Nobody get me I can't be demonetized. Nobody get my channel flagged, please. But change historically has not really taken place without a little bit of societal upheaval, without impoliteness, without people saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But, in a less, oh no, I accidentally booped someone's, oh, well, that's new. What did, I accidentally brought up Han's comment, but now that I know that I can do this, I can say, look, I'm responding to this particular thing. Here, read the thing that I'm actively responding to. So thanks, Han, for making me inadvertently discover this. So, but yes, I'm actually going to bring up the thing. Here we go. And tell me, by the way, if you don't want me to do this, I will stop. So it's just that there's no time to convince people sometimes. How long did it take the Indians to throw off the British? Only when they started kicking their butts. And that's kind of true. The British weren't going to give up those resources. And I'm pretty sure that it had some kind of military strategic value to them as well, not just the natural resources. They gotta have their tea, man. They gotta have their tea and their spices, because British food sucks. No, I actually, there is some traditional British cuisine that I actually like. But yeah, historically speaking, major revolutions have not happened with not a drop of blood spilled. It is absolutely good to strive for non-violent expression, but most of the time things don't really start to begin to change until people become impolite. And I think that's the thing we can talk more about another day, but I am glad that you brought it up, Han, and I am glad that it is part of this conversation, because I don't want this to ever become, and I think this is another reason that I like that we read the Party Manifesto at the beginning of every episode. I never want this to become too ivory tower-esque. I'm I am a very academic sort of person. You know, I am the eternal scholar, as it were. But I also want to keep things very grounded in reality. And sometimes the reality of people's situations, the rules, nobody cares, and they're just not viable in particular situations, whether it be on an individual basis or on a countrywide basis, like it was in the case with India and Britain. That is the end of my thought. Someone else take over. I need to drink my beer. I'm thirsty.
But I think part of the India and Britain thing goes hand in hand also with a supervillain that we mentioned earlier, Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a very good supervillain.
Yeah, an awesome supervillain. I mean, you know, he was pretty much hated during his time by a significant part of population. So therefore, you know, when I say he was a supervillain, I mean it in the most respectful manner possible, because if I was going to choose a form of supervillainy, his was really fucking effective.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what the Indians were able to do under Gandhi and what Martin Luther King was able to do was to sit there and go, all right, we're coming out here, we're protesting peacefully under these circumstances, and watch how it is that the powers that be react to that. And when people saw that, really saw that for the first time, it became something that became a part of the broader public conversation. And
obligatory aside that, yes, both Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. both did things within their lifetimes that were less than savory, things that maybe not back then, but nowadays we would definitely consider kind of shitty. They both did those things. In this particular moment, we are talking about other things that they did.
I don't know.
It's a different video to talk about the shitty things that people who were the head of movements did.
Yeah, that was something that we've talked about before. And I think something that we can talk about later too, about not standing people. You know,
don't stand any public figure. Definitely.
Everybody
also maybe don't stand people that you know, but definitely don't stand public figures.
Yeah, I think that there is an element there of we have to recognize the foibles of the people who manage to do great things. And not everybody's got their feet of clay moments. Everybody's got a vice somewhere in their life that they're not necessarily proud of. Okay, great. What did you accomplish, and did that vice become the thing? Is your vice turning into something that destroys you or other people? That's pretty much where I'm at on that.
Yeah.
Now, I am not standing them, but they are good examples of how to use a particularly intriguing method of being able to raise awareness of we are being treated rather horribly. And being able to put it out into the public eye for the first time where the whole goddamn world could see it. Mm-hmm. That changed the game dramatically. It didn't just change the game for them, but it showed that by showing the actions of the people in power, the people in power were going to have to start changing their actions.
Yes.
So that impact with that.
Before we move on, now that I know that I have this capability, I do want to share a comment that Han made, and because now it's actually going to be displayed on screen. It's going to be in the video, forever immortalized, and I have to share it. I.e. the British. Let's steal their spices, but not bother to learn how to use any of them. That made me laugh. Dave was in the middle of saying something very serious, and I smirked. I had to share that.
But you know, I
another thing that we might not be able to totally dive into today, but part of the reason that Martin Luther King Jr. in particular was so villainized, maybe not so much for this particular aspect publicly, but definitely privately, he was very, very anti-capitalism. There are a lot of his letters that specifically go into look, we cannot truly start to dismantle these things until we pull away from, the greed that unfettered capitalism inevitably, puts us in the throes of. It's inevitable, and we're in the middle of it, and you can't deny that it's causing true harm. We have to figure out a better way. I was hand flat again.
Ah, there we are.
I'm just futzing with all of the buttons now. I'm very happy that I know that I can do all these things. It makes me like not necessarily want to try another platform besides StreamYard, but we've got a little bit of time if we want to think about using another one. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, actually, Puppetron written backward just made a good reference on that one, because one of the things that he was talking about was literally doing a war on poverty, much the same way that he had taken on racism, and the idea that that is something. Again, this could be something that we can go into in a much larger sense. And I see it all the time now in the United States, that we have somehow managed to confuse capitalism with freedom. And
it's not the same thing.
Not even close. And in point of fact, there is something about the idea of having corporations that are basically private tyrannies. The only people that have a say in what a corporation does are the stockholders. And even then, they're still buffered by, the people sitting in a board and the CEO and all of those other things.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that because of a very successful, shall we say, propaganda campaign, and again, growing up in the 80s, stuck in the middle of the Cold War, where it was originally it was communism versus democracy, and then it became communism versus capitalism.
Huh.
And those two...
Interesting shift, no?
Yeah, those ended up getting a little confused in there. And to me, I think that that is something that we have never really gotten a handle on since then. And we have to sit there and go, capitalism is a form of economics, and democracy is a form of politics. And they are two completely different games. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed, is to sit down. One of the things that, especially with villains, and again, I will pull out one of my all-time favorites just because he's so particularly twisted in a horrible example in one way, but a really good example in other ways, Hannibal Lecter. The use and form of language, the means and methods of how we use language, the specific use in terms of names are very important to a proper villain in my mind. Because language is a form and function of how it is that we transmit ideas to other people's brains. And if I'm going to be sitting there, lording my power over you or showing that I am far superior, the reason that I am far superior is, well, I'm demonstrating it with my use of language and ideas. And then failing that, I will throw you into the pit full of sharks.
Language is a funny thing when we get into the realm, or within the realm of our particular brand of supervillainy, because we are using terms in kind of an antithetical way to what they are generally used as, but also sometimes we use them exactly. Throwing into a pit of sharks, for example. We use it exactly how most people consider it to be. Again, a bigger topic that we will hopefully get into someday, but propaganda and the production of propaganda and the similar techniques that can be used, that have been used historically, that are so very similar to marketing. No offense to anyone who works in marketing. Gotta eat, gotta have a job, I get it. But yeah, marketing, advertising, there are a lot of the same kind of psychological tomfoolery going on that happens in propaganda. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be like evil and manipulative, but it's just interesting to think about. We'll talk about it another day.
I'm responding to something because there was a comment made about communism, a small group. And to me, I think that one of the things that I've always pointed out about the Bolsheviks and also Mao and some of the others is they never bothered to read Marx properly. Marx had always said that communism is a form, would come through a form of social evolution. That we would go from feudalism to democracy, we would go to socialism and then eventually communism. And then if you talk to the people who are followers of Kropotkin and Bakunin, we then take another step into anarchism, which is stateless socialism.
Yeah.
But communism requires not just a social system, it requires a social change to go hand in hand with an economic and political change. people have to be willing to accept the concepts of it before it'll be functional and working. And I think
it's really very difficult. I'm not saying it hasn't been done, but it's pretty difficult to institute things like particular systems like socialism and communism on a wide scale in their more purer forms, let's say, without you have to have what am I trying to say? It's not going to come easily. You can't just bam institute it overnight and suddenly everybody is under its thrall.
but also,
Now, I know the obvious example is, well, China is an enormous country with a massive population, and they are a communist country. I don't feel well enough equipped to particularly respond to that. But that's kind of my general thought. Like, these things don't happen overnight, and if people really don't want to commit to it, it's not really going to exist in that sense. Do either of you, children of the 80s, who actually saw news about the communist threat?
well, I mean, if you looked at the news of the 80s and the communist threat, I mean, I was really hitting adolescence about the same time that we had Brezhnev, who was basically Stalin-like in office, as the chairman of the Central Committee of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union at that point in time. And even as somebody who is a democratic socialist like me will sit there and go, no, the Russian experiment was pretty much a failure because, again, I'm going to pick on another philosopher on this one. I want to say it was Kropotkin or Bakunin, but they made a comment along the lines of, take the most ardent revolutionary and give him all the powers of the Tsar, and within a year, he'll be worse than the Tsar himself. You kind of have to be willing to change the mindset of how it is that power is something that you need to be able to hold, but you need to be able to wield in a manner where it's not just about you and your ideas. Power has to go from the ground up, not from the top down, in order for it to be used effectively.
And I don't this is something in particular that I am really interested in studying in greater detail. As far as like historical examples of communism, socialism in the real world, not just as theoretical ideas, but I want to see, like, when did it get to that point? Like, when did it get to that, it's all about me and my ideas, and I'm the only one who can truly take us in this direction. That, despite the fact that all the founding fathers, were, for the most part, I think all of them, if not, or most of them, if not all of them, were slave owners. They had all kinds of things that they were doing that, were not okay. They probably treated their women like shit. They probably treated their neighbors who didn't own land like shit. In any case, the whole, Washington not wanting to hold on to power, and people, asking him to stay in office and continue forward, and him backing down, whether that was his own decision, as it is frequently depicted in the history books, or if it was kind of a combination of his own idea and pressure from other people telling him to step down so that someone else could take his place. That may be the one, I don't know what adjective to call this. Positive thing. It's a positive thing that has come from the American experiment. Capital T, capital A, capital E. The whole idea that you have to hand off power on a routine basis. And if you do not, it is inevitable that you are always going to return to the same kind of circumstances in which you have crazy oligarchs. It's just a matter of time. I've had plenty of people tell me, as I've been going through my voting years, which are not as long as some other people. I did not vote immediately when I was 18. I took a few years because I really wanted to understand the process better, and know more about who I was actually voting for. What something that a lot of people have told me is, like, even if you don't know everything about all of the judges that are up for re-election, almost always just vote in someone new. Just vote in someone new, because they're and this is not my personal opinion necessarily, but a lot of people have said this to me. There is almost never a good reason to keep a judge on the bench for more than a few years. And I know that it's probably really difficult to get anything done at a higher level of government, like say Congress or Senate, unless you are there for a long, 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 long time, especially when you're in kind of a slow process of things like we are right now with the pandemic. Everything is moving at a snail's pace, it seems like. But it's probably really difficult to get any particular thing done. But at the same time, people should be rotated out more often, I think. And I don't know that people should necessarily be able to hold office like they can hold office for multiple terms, but maybe not consecutively. Like, you can have your term, you'll step down, someone else will come in that is voted in. And then if you want to get on the ballot for the next round, you can after that. I don't know. Thoughts, feelings, concerns. Star, you've been really quiet. I want to make sure you're still alive. You're just observing like a sponge.
Well, no, but yeah, I think you're right. I always thought that 12 years was a good maximum for, higher office as far as Senate and Congress, or Senate and House. Because you're right, 4 years isn't enough time to get a lot of initiatives put forward and actually get the ball rolling. But, being there for more than 12 years seems to be pretty excessive. I mean, there's people who have, been in Congress all their lives, all their adult lives almost, They get in when they're in their mid-20s and they're still there in their mid-80s. There's something going on there that, that just can't be good for a healthy society, to have somebody who is generations older than who's actually moving the country, telling everybody else how they're going to live. And,
it very much has that feeling of, oh, Dad, get out of my room. You're ruining my life. Yeah. But also, seriously, you're ruining my life. I can't afford to fucking eat. And I was kicked out of my apartment by my landlord. So anyway, please continue.
But yeah, 12 years, I think, is sufficient to, let's say, they introduce a bill. It's going to take a while to get through Congress. And then finally it gets on board, but it needs the guidance, through another term, and then perhaps even a third. But by that third term, you can pick the people who are going to move that along further, who are going to keep the, this whatever project alive. But man, go do something else, rather than fall asleep in the hall of justice.
God damn it. Oh yeah, no, it's difficult to watch that shit. And like, don't get me wrong, I completely understand. That has got to be a hell of a stressful job. Like, everybody hates you, no matter whether you're doing what they want or not. And it's stressful to go through all the legalese of everything. Even if that is something, even if you were a lawyer for part of your life, or a judge, or if you, just someone who has to understand that shit in general. Hell, even if you were a healthcare worker who had to understand all the healthcare ease. I can't think of a word to describe. Like, it's basically legal ease, but with a healthcare bent to it. That no patient on a regular basis understands that shit. And so a lot of the time, are getting kind of screwed over if something should say go wrong. But yeah, no. If you're gonna be there, fucking be there. And if you feel like your heart's not in it anymore, just leave. Just leave. There are other things you could go write a book. Plenty of people will buy it. You'll be comfortable for the rest of your days.
Yeah, that's what CNN and Fox News are for. When liberals and conservatives retire from Congress, they go and they get their gig with CNN or Fox, respectively, depending on which way they lean.
Yeah. We have gone to a completely different direction, and I'm not mad about it. Like, we were talking about being nice to each other. And then suddenly we talked about, all right, now how do we bring communism to pass? How do we do a heckin' communism, please?
Well, first of all, we start with social evolution, which is something that we're because I do not want to try to repeat the mistakes of the past with the idea of communism.
Yeah.
When people start freaking out about the idea of socialism, they always point toward countries that started off trying to, drop a communism right in the middle of everything, and said that they were socialist. The more functional forms of this are pretty obvious. Northern Europe has very, very functional forms of social safety nets and in-house socialism. Germany has some of that as well, and they have a remarkably functional economy. I mean, they're only in the driver's seat of the EU, for fuck's sake. Most of the EU is in that circumstance. Japan, Korea, others. They're democratic states, but with socialistic overtones when it comes to things that allow the people to actually do things like survive, be healthy. And it also is part and parcel of a society where, and again, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Osaka, Japan, and he is totally blown away by the American reaction to masks. Because in Japan, even before the onset of a pandemic, in Japan, if you have a sniffle but you can still make it to work, you wear a mask. Because
it's incredibly common over in East Asian countries.
But population concentration is the key part there. If you don't, you're going to have a flu outbreak that's going to be staggering. So you have a social responsibility to take care of the people around you by putting on a fucking mask when you go to work. The problem is that, again, here's where we go back to that element of individualism run amok. Look, I don't enjoy wearing a mask as much as anybody else does, but I am also acutely aware I work at a fucking hospital. I'm a potential biological weapon.
Yeah.
So I wear a mask to protect you. That is my social responsibility as an individual. Because again, my sneeze should stop and not affect you. I
feel like that's fair.
Yeah.
That's more than fair.
Yeah.
And I think this is something we'll come back to time and again. And right now we have kind of this perfect storm for having these kinds of conversations, not just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but also what has been going on politically in the U.S. And for that matter, there are plenty of other places in the world where are like gasoline on this conversation. Oh God, where was I going with it? Come on.
Oh, I feel
the idea you said earlier. There was this shift from it's the war on communism, what was it? Communism versus democracy, and then it became communism versus capitalism. And there is also this layer of, and it's been going on for ages, this idea of individualism equals never giving a shit about anybody else. And what you want, not necessarily what you need, but what you want, always takes priority for you. The problem with that is if everybody acted that way, how did I used to put this when I was a kid? Because my dad always used to say, like, if everybody only ever thought about themselves, then no one would ever be thinking of you. So what I always used to say was, if everyone covered each other's asses, then everyone's ass would be covered, and there would be no naked asses. And I understand we like naked asses in this group here,
Yeah.
but
there's a place for fucking everything.
Yeah, and conversely, on the other side of that, if you are only ever thinking about you and everybody else acts the same way, no one is ever going to be thinking of you. And you were only going to be the only you were only going to ever be the person thinking of you. And society won't function like that. And if you want what comes with living in a society, you want the benefits of living in how Lily and I talked about this a couple of days ago. If you want to reap the benefits of an urban population, if you want all of the technology that comes with all of this, all of the conveniences that you get to have access to, then guess what? You have to put up with a certain amount of living with other people and recognizing that they have needs too, that they have wants too, and they're not going to line up perfectly with yours. I'm sorry, but if you want everything to always be your way, and if you are always going to only be thinking of yourself, then you need to move away from any urban center. You need to live in the middle of the woods. And then, you know what? If anyone comes onto your property, sure, go ahead and pull your weapon of choice and, do what you see fit, I suppose. The fact is, we don't live in that world. You might like to think you do, but we don't. And there's rooms for finding the good elements of all of these things, but if you're so severely attached to one idea, and that goes for socialism and communism and anarchism and anything relatively adjacent to that, that goes for those things as well, not just ultra-conservatism and libertarianism and how even middle-of-the-road liberalism. You can't be so committed to one idea and so inflexible. What is it? Come on now, Kat. Come on. Musical reference. Fiddler on the Roof. Tavia says, "If I bend that far, I will break." And why will he break? Because he's being so brittle about it. Now, in the end, yes, I know it's his choice to decide whether or not to disown his daughter for marrying a Russian Orthodox boy instead of a nice Jewish boy. But if you are so brittle and so locked into one thing, it's never going to work out perfectly. And that goes for all of us. That goes for all of us and any of us. We have to be willing to experiment. We have to be willing to pluck out the good elements of what works and what doesn't work. And if you want to live with other people and benefit, or even if you don't, if you want to benefit from the things that come with living with other people, those highly dense urban populations, massive, progresses in technology, spreading of resources and all that. If you want to have access to the benefits of that, you are going to have to make some concessions. If you want to live in a society, you have to live in a society.
Society here.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just going with, there's been a running line about, in memes and such, about we're trying to have a society here, and the way that we structure is kind of important. And we have been kind of ignoring that structure for, I'd say for about the last 30 years or so, slowly getting away from a lot of the things that make the society work. And part of that is, as Kat was pointing out, you got to make a few concessions to the fact that other people live around you, and they're a little tired of your shit too. But, that's just my feeling.
Yeah,
I don't like. Go ahead, Star.
Sorry.
Oh, everybody has opinions and thoughts, and and their own values and that type of thing. And when I was young, I remember being encouraged to explore those feelings and opinions and, all of that kind of good stuff. But at what point did we start as a society saying, or stop saying, you can have your feelings and opinions, but not everybody else is wrong. So at what point did we stop saying that? I think that
The reason they're called thoughts and opinions is because they are thoughts and opinions,
yeah,
not
right,
facts
and feelings
and laws of physics, which this has nothing to do with anything, but I was reading last night about a new state of matter that is visible in like swarms of birds, swarms of fishes, not visible but present. And I didn't quite understand it at 11:30 at night, but I'm going to link it down in the description below because it's a thing that basically breaks the laws of physics. And I think that's really cool, and I think that's something to keep in mind when you are talking about, living with other people. You may have your general rules about things, and you can have your personal values, and you can live your life the way that you want to live. But things exist outside of that you have no idea what they're like. And
do you think that,
they don't necessarily have to play by your rules.
do you think
I swear
that
I actually had a thought in here.
Oh, I feel you on that.
do you
Anyway,
think perhaps
please continue.
it was when adults started trying to reason for younger people and impose that reasoning on younger minds that maybe couldn't grasp the concept? For example, it's been the thing for what, maybe 15, 20 years now, where adults are encouraged to tell their children things like, to not tell their children that they're wrong, but tell them that that choice wasn't the best choice. So try again. It's not, when did, maybe it's the introduction of that reasoning that kids couldn't grasp. And so they grew up thinking that their feelings, thoughts, and opinions were absolutely correct rather than another possibility or another, whatever. It became where your ideas are possible to your ideas are probable. And I feel like there's a lot of people now that grew up feeling like, or learning that their ideas were probable, and therefore are try to impose their own way of living and their own thoughts and methods on other people, and are so offended by every little thing that happens around them. And I'm not talking about the big things like somebody walking into a store without a mask type of thing. I'm talking about just their well, I guess that would fall into it as well, really. But what I'm saying is that it kind of wraps back into being nice and tolerant and everything else with other people, and it's civil. Is that I just think that all of these new ideas on how to treat the thoughts and feelings and ideas of children, and molding them to never believe they're wrong, to never understand what it means to lose, or to not win necessarily at a competition, or always get what they want. It's that kind of thing.
Are you about to say something about participation trophies?
Yeah. It's
I was wondering which way you're going to go with that, like the whole, like, we never tell our children no. We never say that's bad. We never say that's wrong. And I'm kind of two minds on that. The way that you were putting it, like, the decision you made there was not the best decision, because what happened because of it. On the one hand, I like kind of the general theory behind that because in general, I appreciate it when parents don't. I understand sometimes for expediency's sake, we stick to pretty clear binaries. Yes, no. If I say no, Joshua, you must not do the thing. I don't know why my hypothetical child's name is Joshua. When I was a kid and I thought I was going to have 16 children, it would have been Gareth. But then I suddenly realized that no, I actually just like hanging out with kids, or don't actually want any of my own. So I in theory, I like the idea of trying to keep possibilities open for children. On the other hand, I don't think that's like the only thing that's at play here in the whole, like, well, you know, my parents taught me that my ideas are just as viable as theirs, but since they were in charge at the time, their ideas were the ones that had to fly and not mine. But now I'm the adult and my ideas will fly. Don't ask me why I did that.
But no, yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. It's, you know, you don't. I think it was all.
There's got to be some way we can meet in the middle of that.
Right.
Go ahead.
Because I think what it was is, you know, they were realizing that kids were just growing up to be, you know, kind of like dicks, and so they wanted to. They were trying to figure out why, and so I think that they thought that kids were growing up to be dicks because they were too downtrodden when they were growing up. And now it's like the opposite. You know, I mean, I think maybe it's too big of a conversation to fit into one little topic. But
especially when we're already technically over 2 hours.
Yeah, but I guess it's just, you know, we learn from our mistakes. And if we're not allowed to experience that when we're growing up, then we're not really learning that not all ways are right. Not everything that we do is acceptable. And so we grow up thinking that, oh, well, it's okay if I do this. It's okay if I do that, you know, and, you know, and you grow up being a dick to people because you think your opinion is the only one that matters, you know, and that your ideas are the only ones that should matter to you, and therefore you discount everybody else's, and you think, well, who are they to put their societal will upon me? Well, sure,
because their parents told them the exact same thing.
Yeah, but what it is, and there has to be a civility. And where does the word come from? You know, civil and civilization, and you know, so again, you're talking about a collective of an understanding of this is what we want from life. This is how we want to be treated. This is therefore that's how we are going to treat others. And you know, that I think is somewhat lost in the minds of a lot of people that are growing up to never believe that their opinion or their ideas are fallible.
Great, because you're wrong. Excuse me, I haven't spoken for 10 minutes.
Please.
I'm dying to throw this one out here. Because another one is that there's a self-reinforcing element that goes hand in hand with our popular culture. And specifically, here's where I'm going to pick on somebody who died recently, and I want to put a boot in while his body is still there.
Ooh.
The entire notion of the Rush Limbaughization of conversation, where you start off with, my idea is absolutely positively correct, and you open up with a concept that completely shuts down communication right from the outset. You are a libtard, and your idea is stupid and wrong. And John, your idea is wrong. Okay, it's not totally wrong, and I see your point, but I have to riff on it.
I was actually told that by Rush Limbaugh once on one of his radio programs when I was like 12 years old. I called his radio program, and that's basically what he told me.
to me, I think that there is something about the way, and there's been an evolution in the way that popular culture handles conversation that goes hand in hand with the idea of limiting the possibility of the exchange of information. Everything has now become a confrontation in which we have to win, especially when we're talking about real issues and things like that. There's no room for compromise. My idea has to win, and that has become part of the dominant American culture. There's no middle acceptable ground where we can meet and speak and be able to reach a compromise where we can have a fucking society here. Instead, we have to keep everybody separate, and by creating circumstances where we can't communicate and speak, we instead drive the conversation into something that keeps us all individuals rather than doing really functional forms of collective action. And to be perfectly honest, my little inner conspiracy guy says that's probably part and parcel of a bigger plan.
That's what I was going to say. I was just like, I was like dying to get in there, but of course he was already going there. Like, yes, of course. I don't actually believe that there is some dark underground chamber where the hooded lizard men meet and, parse out the particulars of, ruining society. They're the true supervillains. We only wish we could be like them. But it does. Even if that wasn't the actual plan of anybody that was like laid out and executed, that's the effect it has. It separates us, it divides us, and it ends up being to the benefit of the people that we should really be trying to dismantle their power structures. We were talking a little bit earlier about something or other, and I don't unfortunately quite remember what it is. I'm going to be really pissed when I am editing the highlights stream, which I'm actually going to start to get to next week. I will probably start with the most recent one and work my way backward.
Yeah,
but
a bunch of really good ideas, and the rest of us being really stupid and goofy.
and me making weird noises. But no, God, that I don't even remember what I was saying.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. Oh God. But these separations and these little hierarchies that we get set up into, whether it's through our own doing or whether it's through the doing of people that came before us and we just kind of grew up into it and inherited it, and it is what it is. I don't know what to do with it. Jesus Christ. I can't save the world all on my own, which one cannot be the head of any kind of society and be the end all be all, because guess what? We are a symbiotic species. I am pretty sure that is the correct scientific term. We have to live together. We have to live amongst each other, even if we don't like each other, even if we are, technically speaking, competing for resources, which, once again, I would like to reiterate, there are enough fucking resources. There is enough fucking, for the moment, water. Not necessarily super soon in the future, but for the moment, there's enough water, and there is definitely enough food and land to go around for every single person on this planet. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Like, do the fucking research, learn it for yourself, and the reasons why I have come to that conclusion, but don't let anybody convince you that just flat out there aren't enough resources and the surplus population better die off and hurry up doing it. I can't remember the fucking line from Muppet Christmas Carol, but Star's got a thing. While I collect my thoughts, please say the thing.
I was going to just say, just for reference, make sure you have plenty of miniature peanut butter cups on hand, because those resources will become very limited if I come and visit. And there are, just if you buy them, buy lots of them. I will reduce the resources. So anyway, I
will have to share like just this end bit of this with my friend Molly, because she will that is one of her frequent junk food buys is Reese's peanut butter cups. I still don't remember exactly what I was trying to say. I think it was something to the effect of hierarchies. Something about goddamn hierarchies. Oh, separation of peoples.
Yes.
We don't. Oh, and I think it was when we were talking about marketing and propaganda. All of this separation between people, people like to say, and by people, I mean folks on the right side of things, the conservative side of things, like to say that identity politics is what's dividing us. That's not what it is. Identity politics, just in short form, is advocating for a specific group, specific needs of a specific group, and using that label of identity as a label. That's how they move forward with trying to fight for legislation that will help them live better lives. That's what identity politics is in effect. But just because we have different identities does not mean that we have to separate ourselves, because in reality, what actually separates us is not that we have less of access to resource or more access to resources. It's that we accept that is how it is. That there are the haves and the have-nots, the have-mores and the have-lesses. And yes, in like a very literal sense, just statistically speaking, there will always be people going hungry. There will always be people without shelter. There will always be people who are being shat on by people who are deciding to be assholes that day. There's a reason we say shat on, because people are being assholes. And what do assholes do? They shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Raspberry noises all around. But it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. If you would accept that it could be different, if you wanted it to be, if you were willing to work with other people to make it be a different way, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be mistakes made along the way. That doesn't mean that we're going to, be fucking mad at each other the whole time while we're trying to make the goddamn thing work. I know I always bring everything back to theater. It's what I do. But in this particular instance, I would like to share with folks something that you may not have heard of. It's called devised theater. In devised theater, there is no one director. There is no director and then the cast. It is a work that is built from the ground up. Maybe you have a text that you're basing the work off, like a classical text, but it is made from the ground up, and it is made as a consensus among the group. Yes, it is really difficult to do in larger groups, because yes, as the group grows larger, it is really difficult to gain a consensus about anything. That's just the way of it. Not everybody's going to think the same, and if we all thought the same, we wouldn't be fucking human. But even if there are disagreements, even if in the end not everybody is perfectly happy with the way the thing turned out, and by the thing I mean the performance, the piece of work, you still come to a consensus to put the thing forward. It's not something like, yes, it's all discussed, but then you have one final person who is like the decision maker. Generally speaking, in devised theater, it's a consensus. And it's hard sometimes. It's uncomfortable. There are people stomping off into corners because you're putting forward an idea that they think is inherently damaging and problematic. And they may be right.
It's one of the things where you really have to understand the definition between share and impose.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you share ideas, a group is able to take from those ideas and help the common goal. It's when you start to impose your ideas that it goes a different direction. And if everybody could understand that.
Well, and even if they can't necessarily, because people who are in the situation of devised theater, generally it's because you want to be in that kind of situation. You have the kind of personality that is like naturally suited to that sort of working environment. But occasionally there are situations like, say, for a workshop, or in my case, the first time I ever encountered it was at school for a semester away. Funnily enough, I happen to be exactly the type of personality where I was like, oh my God, is this what I've been doing these past 10 years when I've been writing and producing my own shows? I had no idea. But there might not be people who are good at it. You know, they're going to be resistant to that way of doing things. And maybe eventually they'll come around to be like, okay, there is some merit to doing it like this, because look at the final product. Look at this thing that we made. Just because it doesn't include all of my ideas, just because in the end there is this, you know, these few parts that I don't particularly like. I don't think they add anything to the work, but we decided to do it because we decided to do it. By the way, devised work is not easy. It's difficult and it's uncomfortable. Even if you all really like each other and work really similarly and agree a lot of the time, it's still really difficult. But guess what? Learning to live in a society, learning to, you know, find the ways that we are best going to live with each other, while and, you know, like making sure that needs are taken care of while also not shitting on people. It takes time and it takes effort, and you're gonna make mistakes. You are gonna say some shit that you regret later on. But what matters is not making the mistakes. What matters is not saying shitty things that you regret later, or, you know, you come around to saying like, all right, even though I still stand by what I said, you know, I could have said it a better way, or I could have said it to someone else just to let off some steam. I didn't necessarily need to scream in your face with it. It's what matters is learning to deal with those situations, learning to be uncomfortable, learning to be in a room with people who don't think exactly like you, learning to be in a room with people who come from completely different backgrounds from you. And I don't necessarily think the answer is what it was called, the trolley problem, you know, maximizing the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. I don't think that's always necessarily the answer. But we're in a place now where we're trying to come to terms with that. You know, do we want equality or do we want equity? Are they the same thing? Do we want both? Do we want neither? Do we want something entirely different? We live in interesting times, we does. Somebody was going to say a thing. Please say the thing.
And I think that part of it is that when we're in the process of spreading the information, we have to remember the old comment about the medium is an inherent part of the message. The way that we say it helps to convey the information or helps to destroy the information in the process of doing it. And, you know, it's that same comment I make routinely of, you know, praise in public and punish in private. If you screwed something up, I'm probably going to have a word with you off to the side. Doing it in public is never really going to help. All it really does is make sure that that particular person is never, ever going to speak to you for any degree of assistance ever again. And also, mistakes are really a key element of learning. If somebody makes a mistake, don't back up making a mistake.
Wonderful teacher.
Instead, you sit there and you go, hey, you made a mistake. This is how it went south. Now we can both work on this to make the damn thing happen. But, you know,
that'd be nice.
You know, I've only managed to come up with that particular piece of wisdom after years and years of mistakes. So, you know, give with one, take with the other.
I want to give you both a chance to say final thoughts. I did want to, I already pulled it up just so that it was ready to go. Xerxes made the comment, the problem isn't not enough supplies, it's that 1% controls 99% of the supplies. That reminds me, thank you, Xerxes. There is another video that I will link in the description down below after this that is a really good kind of Marxism 101, and, you know, don't let the word Marxism throw you off, it'll be a good video for you to go and watch. It's a really easy to listen to, easy to digest interview with a I want to say he's a philosophy professor, and his particular specialty is Marxism and communism. And I know I've been saying communism a lot lately. Like I said earlier, don't stan any public figures, don't stan any form of government or social structure, because there will always be things you can do to improve it, and no one, is going to be the perfect answer to everything. But this particular interview is really great, in particular because he brings up the fact, just a really easy to contemplate sort of fact. And he says the richest people in the world, even if you took away half of their wealth, decreased it by 50%, and pardon me if I am misquoting him here, missummarizing, but if you took away a lot of their wealth, they would still be the richest people in the world if you took half of their wealth and distribute it to the poorest 50% of the population. That part I know I am remembering correctly. He was saying the top richest people in the world have more combined wealth than the combined 50% of the world's population. Not a country, the world, the entire population of Earth. The bottom 50% has less than that top group of wealthy people. And if they gave away whatever that percentage is of their wealth, I'm going to say half for simplicity's sake, and distributed it to that bottom half, they would still be the richest people in the world. And it just seems both practically insane, never mind getting into any kind of moral what's its and who's its. It seems practically insane that one person or one family should have that much material wealth and material resources, even if it's like imaginary monies that they can spend here and there, and not like actual physical resources of, say something like gold, whatever. The fact that they will never ever be able to spend that in their lifetimes. Their progeny down the line for generations to come will never be able to spend that much in their collective lifetimes. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with it?
But here's where
it serves no purpose, and it's criminal on a practical level in a way that, as a supervillain, I find it highly offensive. That you're just letting it sit there and it has no purpose. The only thing that should sit there and have no purpose other than to exist is art, okay? Art can have no other purpose but to be art. Material resources that could feed someone, clothe someone, give someone a shelter to rest in. It's not the same fucking thing.
Right.
Go ahead, doctor.
What we're seeing there, though, is the long train of feudalism, because basically what you've described is a circumstance that's happened throughout history. One group of people, one family, one organization has significant control over all of the resources, and then therefore gets to decide who's people. And that is something that we need to get away from, and that's also why I keep pointing toward a more socialistic model where, again, we're coming from the ground up rather than the top down. And being able to sit there and recognize, okay, the idea that we, as a country, with the amount of wealth that we have people sleeping in the streets is the sort of thing that should be considered a literal crime. Literally, people should be in jail over this shit. You should not be allowed to lead if people are still sleeping in the goddamn streets. That we should just start with a basic agreement and then work our way up. The idea that we got rid of the social safety net is something that is now beginning to become, it's within years, it was pretty obvious we'd made a ginormous mistake, but we're really good at ignoring our mistakes.
I just wanted to keep going. I just love the cheesy snacks. The cheesy snacks, wrapped in bacon. I really like them, and so do I have to think about the people sleeping in the gutter? I'd rather not.
It'd be a lot easier to not think of people sleeping in the gutter if they weren't sleeping in the gutter. I would feel pretty accomplished if I managed to pull that stunt off.
So I think this may be the longest that we've ever gone. So I'm gonna cut us off after giving the floor for your final thoughts. In 2 weeks' time, hopefully I've redeemed myself a little bit for talking the fuck over you so much last week. In 2 weeks' time, I think what I would like to talk about, and I'm gonna throw this out here, throw it into the pitch. What do we think in the room? Can we make a consensus? Speaking to the subject of individualism, and such severe individualism that it blinds us to the realities of other people's lives, and kind of the whole myth of the self-made millionaire is something that I think a lot about in general, but in particular, I'm thinking about it because a book that I am listening to right now called Laziness Does Not Exist. It is by Dr. Devin Price. I will link it in the description. It was recommended to me recently by my therapist for different reasons that have nothing to do with my anti-capitalism sentiments, but I'm sure they realized that I would enjoy it partially because of that. But it was more for the overworking and the shame at not giving 110% 110% of the time. But there are a lot of now, all I can think of is just the whole look, this whole mythology of the self-made millionaire and how they didn't have to rely on anybody else, and it always seems to be the same type of character, the same type of stock character that we have in these books and these movies. It's always somehow the chosen one who manages to become this self-made millionaire, and it never has anything to do with their heritage. It never has anything to do with their physical surroundings or the people that they make friends with, and any contributions that they might have made to their lives, because, shocker, none of us does anything on our own, ever. Not ever. You know what we do alone? We are born alone and we die alone, and sometimes we get to pee alone. But we don't do anything else by ourselves. That's not a quote, that's just me being punchy and sleep deprived. Please give your final thoughts so that I can end this debacle.
Okay.
This fun debacle that I love.
Hand it off to Lord Starhawk. Look, all of a functioning society begins with civility and being able to treat the people around you with kindness and respect. And there's an ongoing thing of, well, what if it turns out they're not worthy of respect? Okay, fine. Or what if they mistreat it? I get you. But you know what? Then you've learned a very important lesson about that person, and then you can forget them.
Mm-hmm.
And get them the fuck out of your life. If I behaved at a certain level and somebody behaved underneath that and made a habit of doing it, then they don't need to be in my life. Fuck that noise. And it helps me to structure the society of the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You cannot automatically change the society you live in, but you can absolutely control, at least to some degree, the people that you choose to have around you. Obviously, some of us who, still have to live with other people and have less power than someone who's able to live on their own cannot necessarily make that same decision. But, in general, you are able to control to some degree the sort of people that you keep around you. Don't let there be, as much as possible, people who are going to be disrespectful to you or disrespectful to others. They might be perfectly nice to you, but, bigoted in an extreme way, one way or another, to some group of people. And, you know, I feel like I shouldn't have to say, like, if that's not okay with you, please don't let it be okay with you. You can choose to not have that person in your life. And hopefully at some point, enough people are going to make that decision that that person is going to say to themselves, you know, actually, how did you put it earlier, Dave? Like, why is everyone being a dick to me? Oh, no.
Oh yeah, that
Am I the dick?
everybody's
and of course,
today, and then you stop.
and of course, you know, this is a discussion for another day, but it's not always down to bad apples in a barrel of good apples. Okay, there are wider societal trends at play, but you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know who you can control to have in your life at this very moment. People who are being assholes. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to ask them, why is it necessary for you to say things like that? What do you gain from it? And if they answer with an actual answer, maybe have a conversation about that for a few minutes before you walk away. And if they're just continue being assholes, then walk away.
Now we throw the ball into Lord Starhawk's yard. Final answer?
Oh, final thought?
Yes, I know I keep jumping in, but I really mean it. Please give me your final thoughts.
I guess, you know, I'll make it really, really quick and easy. You know, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
Please start without yeah.
Oh my god. You guys make me laugh so much. I'm really glad that you choose to spend your time doing this with me once a week.
I absolutely enjoy
And
it.
My pleasure.
Spent all my
That goes for everybody who chooses to jump in and watch with us. Media, I'm going to go back and read in the comments, but whatever this part 2 is, I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
And to that effect, if you have not, please drop us a like. Do me a heckin' subscribe, whether you're coming to this from my channel or from Doc Zodiac's channel. We do this every Friday. Apparently, now it's been 2 months, Dave.
thing.
Can I get a little digital high five if I can remember what way to go? Wait, other way.
Yes.
Although it may be appearing a different way on your screen, I don't know. Yes, and a down way. Over to the side, down low. Yeah. Do a heck and subscribe. Do us a like. Share the video with people who you think might enjoy it, who might get something out of it. Or hey, if it infuriates them, you should send it to them too, because that's what a good villain would do. But also, I, in addition to not ever wanting this to become an ivory tower type of situation, I also don't want this to become super echo chambery. I like being amongst people who have similar ideas to me and can help me tease out the specifics of general ideas that I have. Is part of the reason I like doing conversations like these. But I also don't mind having other people in the room that have, different thoughts than I do. Like, that's how we learn. We watch things that we wouldn't normally watch. We listen to people that we might not normally find in our daily lives. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. And no, just because I suddenly have Russian accent does not mean I am secret villainous communist sent over here to destroy the capitalist dog. I'm so sorry for anyone who's actually Russian listening to this. I'm so sorry.
We brutalized your accent.
I don't know. Yes, come back next Friday. It's going to be a popcorn episode. I don't necessarily know what we're going to talk about, but now that I am out of the jobby job during the week, I will hopefully put up the topic on the Discord and up on my Twitter maybe a few days earlier than the day of. And it'll be a fun and goofy time, similar to this, and occasionally straying into the realm of socialism and Bakunin and all those greatest hits. But it's also going to be a little lighter, a little fluffier, a little more buttery.
Yeah.
but still a little bit of salt
Buttery.
because I cannot help being a little salty. Something popcorn puns, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
All right,
I like buttery.
everybody, make sure this weekend you take time to do a thing that you love, and if you cannot take the time to do the thing you love, please take 10 minutes. Whether you have to break away and just hide in the bathroom, do 10 minutes of absolutely nothing. Nothing. If there has been anything that the book Laziness Does Not Exist has reminded me, and God, I feel so fucking called out listening to it. So called out. You will hear from my lawyer, Dr. Price, because this vicious attack on my person will not stand. If there is one thing that I would like to reiterate to all the rest of you that I am trying to remind myself on a daily basis, you are not defined. Your value is not determined by the amount of work you put out. Okay? Your productivity does not equal your worth. Please take 10 minutes to do nothing. It's a beautiful, brilliant thing, and it would be a little bit better in the world if we all took a little more time to do nothing. Fuck the hustle. Do nothing sometimes. I love you all so much. Please have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have time to do a heckin' devious thing. That'll be fun for you. Yeah. Bye-bye.